Homework 14, Logarithmic Functions, video 7. I believe this will be the final video of this one. I do want to mention that there's a part of this, this homework that I'm intentionally omitting, and it's the graphs of logarithmic functions. It's not that we can't do them, it's just that we've got so much to cover between now and the next two series of videos. That was something that I chose to sacrifice. You're welcome. If you're curious, I invite you to research it on your own, because the relationship between the graphs of exponential functions and logarithmic functions is very intimate. But I digress. In this last video, we're going to talk about the two log buttons on your calculator. One of them says log, but the other one says ln. Remember, we saw the ln button in a previous series of videos when we needed to raise e to a power because it had e to the x above it. And by the way, if you have a log button on your calculator and you need to, chances are it has 10 to the x above it, and we'll see why in just a moment. If you see a log without a base, log of x or any other argument, it's not a base that you can choose at random. It is a predefined base. It is an implied base. Log of x means log base 10 of x. And this is called a common logarithm. Common logarithm. Looks like there should be another vowel at the end. There's not. So any log without a base is an implied base 10, with one exception. There's another log that's spelled ln, and you can read it ln. I'll tell you what it stands for in just a moment. But ln of x is also a logarithm with a specifically reserved base. It's got an implied base. ln of x means log base e of x. So it's not a coincidence that e to the x is above ln, and it's not a coincidence that 10 to the x is above log. So log without a base means log base 10. That's called a common logarithm. ln x means log base e, and that is called a natural logarithm. You may recall that e was called the natural base. So the logarithm that has base e is called the natural logarithm. That's kind of why this says ln. You might be asking, why isn't it in L? The answer is easy to explain. The man who invented logarithms was French, and in French, this would be said in the reverse order. Logarithm naturel, or something like that. So ln for natural logarithm, or natural log. You can read this ln x, you can also say natural log of x. For those of you destined for calculus, you will become very familiar with this one. So, does this change any of the previous rules? Absolutely not. It just means two things. Number one, if you don't see a base, and it says log, it's base 10. So for example, if I asked you log of 1,000, I am asking you what power turns the base, which is an implied 10, into 1,000. And you may know off the top of your head that it's 3. Or, if I asked you, what is the natural log ln of e to the 5th power? Let's make it more interesting. 1 over e to the 5th power. The implied base on here is e, so I'm asking you what power do you put on e to get the argument, which is 1 over e to the 5th. This looks like we need an exponential rule. They're erased, but hopefully you remember that negative powers make reciprocals. So e to the negative 5 power would equal 1 over e to the 5th, so the missing power is negative 5. So two things about these logs. Number one, they follow the same rules as the other ones. They just have implied bases of 10 and e respectively. Comment number two, these are the buttons that are on your calculator. You could type log of 1,000 in your calculator and it should tell you 3. You could type ln of 1 over e to the 5th if you remember how to access the e, and it should tell you negative 5. So the two buttons on your calculator are only for log base 10 and log base e. As is, you cannot use them to do logs of other bases. So earlier when we said something like log base 3 of 343, excuse me, it was log base 7. You cannot just directly press this button or that button and spit out an answer unless you know a little trick. What's the trick? Well, it's a log rule that will pick up at the end of the next series of videos. So until then, all of the logarithms that you're going to be asked to evaluate, you should be able to evaluate without the need for using either of these buttons, unless it specifically says use this button to do it. All right, and that wraps up this series of videos. We have 2 more left, 2 more series.